actually quite weird to see myself following straight after the titans of aerial archaeology, talking about 40 years of ARC. But it is actually this year that we also celebrate 25 years since we started working in Romania. It certainly, aerial archaeology didn't necessarily start with us in Romania. But what you will be seeing today will be certainly our take on it, and it will be more with reference to our own work. So the year of grace was 1998, but as I said, things had happened before. Now, the way things happened before was very much at the level of illustrating pretty much new sites and not necessarily looking for new ones. To some extent, Alexandru Simeon Ștefan had done that, but it wasn't in a structured program that was targeted to discovery and using this as a tool of prospection. Ioana Bogdan-Cătăniciu, who some of the older members still remember as taking part in some of our earlier meetings in the early 2000s, has also used aerial photographs at the time, in the 70s, especially the 80s, for her work on Roman frontiers. You may recognize across my presentation a very strong Roman archaeology bias, and there's nothing to do about that because both myself and Bill, who is my partner for 25 years in work, we are more interested in Roman archaeology, so that will be a theme. I don't think that happened necessarily in Romania. However, quite a number of countries have gone through that Roman-oriented development of remote sensing techniques. So there you go. But this had happened before I actually met Bill in 1997. At that time, Bill had done already a number of years of aerial reconnaissance in Scotland and targeting particularly crop mark sites, mapping them, producing distributions, and so on. But in 1997, he actually came as, in his quality of Roman archaeologist, specialist, to the Limes Congress, the Roman Frontier Studies, that happened that year in Zalău. I was at the time just out of my undergraduate studies and looking for something interesting to join. And Bill had noticed some aerial photographs, some very old ones in exhibitions, and decided that perhaps it was it could have been an interesting thing to actually use aerial reconnaissance as a method of prospection and see if that's applicable in Romania. Now, just to make a quick break. The quick diversion. At the time, Romania had just woken, got out of its own communist era. Now, that era is known for many, many things, but very few appreciate just how hard it was actually to do anything like our colleagues were doing in Britain or in other countries in Europe at the time. Technically, everything from maps to taking photographs was strictly forbidden because it was a state secret. It was the Cold War, and we very much felt it. Very much because of that, it wasn't even possible to produce very accurate site plans or distribution maps of archaeological sites and so on. So this was very much something that had lingered on into the way that archaeology was being performed at the time until, in the mid 2000s, I would probably say. But, we had to deal with it. So that was the background through which we've started doing aerial reconnaissance. At the time, Bill was lucky enough, having been rejected initially by British Academy, to land a small grant from Leverhulme Trust, who allowed him to come to Romania for the first time in 1998 and start flying. Now, fast forward a few years, this is what happened afterwards. So from the initial area of reconnaissance, trying to not to switch this off. So from the initial in Western Transylvania between 1998 and 2000. Then we've moved base in 2005-6 in southern Dobroja, which we've covered at that time through my postdoctoral fellowship program and afterwards through the Archaeolandscapes project. We've also participated and collaborated with Romanian colleagues from the National History Museum of Romania and covered the north of Dobroja as well as through the middle there, the old valley, the Transalutanus limes, and the southeastern corner of Transylvania. Now, obviously, these different areas have been surveyed at different intensities, and the track logs that you see there on the map do tell that story. Of course, it's one thing when you just fly one season and completely other when you're flying over and over the same landscape over a number of years. So the rate of discovery of sites and improving information about the existing ones obviously varies greatly among them. But the methodology also has developed greatly in all that time. And when we started with aerial reconnaissance, just applying that, mapping what we find, producing distribution maps and site plans, has developed in the following years into much more block landscape coverages, which were at the time possible from in the second part of the 2000 and onwards, through free access to Google Earth imagery, but also through free access to early satellite imagery, and afterwards World War II vertical aerial photographs. So we just dumped it all together and tried to make sense of everything that we mapped. If Kathy was mentioning that, she was part of a team that had 6 people in, there was just Bill and I, in ours. So that's often what happens in academic contexts where, you're just dependent on whatever money you can lay your hands on and try to make best sense out of it. It hasn't happened it hasn't changed in 25 years at all, I'm afraid. Obviously, with reconnaissance, things are developing also depending on weather patterns around here, and I'm sure this is known by people gathered here today, especially when you're looking for crop marks. So the first couple of years of reconnaissance weren't that great, were particularly wet in the area that in the Western Transylvania. So that's why our rate of success was more oriented in those 2 years to upland sites, like this hill fort at Uroi, a very well-known, actually, landmark, natural landmark in the middle of the Mureș Valley, but which hadn't been properly appreciated, properly surveyed. Essentially, people not looking at the hill from the other side of the hill than the one with the quarry facing towards them. So that's where you can see at the back of the hill, you can see a running rampart, which is very much extant and which indicates the area of the hill fort. Now, of course, things changed afterwards since 2000, when it was absolutely brilliant for crop marks. It was so dry that even you could gather things showing into grass coverage, not just the typical wheat, barley, and so on that Kathy was mentioning earlier as being the preferred land coverages that would show anything archaeological. So that was very much the case at Chigmo, but in other places, of course, we had patchy coverage where agriculture was also happening. Obviously, some areas were showing brilliant records of crop mark development, while others were totally blank, of course. Yeah, the very green ones are covered by corn. Another thing that we've noticed was that whenever land was cultivated, was the predominance of late crop marks that were showing really well archaeological underground. And that was something that we didn't necessarily count to recorded to the same extent in that area. But nevertheless, if you're looking at our photographs now, 25 years after, yeah, this is why you'll see a lot of late photographs. Also, because that happened to be the time of the year when probably Bill was managing to get out of work, out of the teaching job, and get to Romania for aerial reconnaissance. So we've obviously covered a number of sites, a lot of Roman military sites and their civilian settlements. We've also, this one is among the largest of them that we managed to patch together. And these have been subsequently used to a certain extent by the teams that were working on the ground at the time, well, doing excavation. In either at that time or subsequently. That was also looking at not just military sites, but also urban sites. You can see here a small part of a very important urban settlement of Dacia, which is at Apulum, which shown very well again in crop marks. And from these, as I said, we managed to do distribution maps as well as site plans. Some of them you've seen earlier. But one of the biggest challenge at the time was very much managing to identify what's new from what was known. People in the audience might still remember how it was back in those days, and with archaeological gazetteers, we certainly did not have anything online and open access. You had to compare and contrast, and you had to chase toponyms that were just simply not existent on the maps that you could lay your hands on, and so on. So it has been a nightmare. It's a lot easier these days, but there's still a lot of work to do. Still, we did manage to find some interesting information, such as on rural sites, which had been a lot less targeted by archaeologists in Romania since probably the late 50s, when, because of the collectivization and the interest into the bringing the rural up and whatnot, had been focused on the history of capitalist imperialist development back in the Roman period on villas. But we did manage to find interesting things. One of the largest, probably the largest villa that we know now in Dacia, here at Varga, previously unknown, and also another one at Vințul de Jos, The reason why I included Vinsu is not because of its size, also being known only from up until then, well, we discovered it, nobody knew about it. The site was known about prehistoric activity. Some of it you can see there by those should I say maculae? But I won't. They are just pits and sunken floor houses settlement that you can see in the top picture, and it turned out not to be just prehistoric, but some of them were actually Roman, and that was because either each of these sites have been subsequently excavated to a certain extent, and that's when things were validated and proposed dates of occupation happened and so on. So both of them were part of student training excavations, both of them in collaboration with Western universities. Yeah, we are looking forward to see how much more of the size that we've discovered at the time will see the same treatment. Then we moved on into the southeast of Romania, which presented different challenges. If the loess geology was helping us a lot in terms of crop marks discovery, there the trick was one to have a site that you can actually map, because the size of the field was making it impossible in many cases to actually add detail from aerial photographs onto them. So it was a bit of a nightmare. But another one, especially in the subsequent seasons during Archaeology project, was to actually be there in time and record before everything was being harvested and plowed. So the sites were actually being, exposed unnecessarily to further erosion because of this early plowing by commercial big companies that were involved in agriculture there. We also managed, as I said, to include a lot of historical imagery there, both from Corona satellites of the 60s, but also, as I mentioned, the Second World War aerial reconnaissance, but for very different reasons. Indeed, in the second case, the challenge was to make sure that you select a sortie that is scouting for later bombing missions in the area, so that you can obviously have as little disturbance into the landscape as possible. It was a very interesting time, at moments very emotional, to see things that are being destroyed just in the next sortie. But the good thing about it was that we actually did manage to put into the archaeological landscape a lot of information that had subsequently disappeared by development, by collective communist-type land reclamations, and so on. So that was the benefit of the major benefit of the exercise. So we managed to reassess and put back into on the table interpretations on very large monuments such as Valului Traian, which if people are familiar with Hadrian Wall and Antonine Wall, you can probably easily see resemblances there. And as I said, because of these very large rate of coverage across the landscape, really come as close as we could to producing a very large coherent archaeological landscape rather than just individual site plans. This is how it looks like now after many years, after 20 years. But it's still showing more and more stuff. That's probably also part of the reason why I didn't manage to publish that yet. So But certainly some of the things that absolutely stood out from the beginning were burial mounds. And Dobroja, this part of Romania, has lots of it. Those that are involved nowadays in the interworking group with Ukraine, they would recognize a lot of the patterns there. But certainly it wasn't necessarily a similar cultural background, cultural and historical background. Now, one of the things that was immediately apparent, and something that I tried to explain later on, was how you can use burial mounds to actually reconstruct settlement patterns, which was what I was interested in, rather than just map, all the mounds in the area. And certainly for this was very useful to first to map all the evidence, although not all of it. Yeah, you can here you can see the kind of information that you get into areas that haven't been, completely covered by modern development, like at Calatis there, and how much more there is actually around the landscape. I think actually Madi Stefan has also filled in a lot more of this area. Yeah, so there is more there to be counted in. But not everything was mounds. There were mounds at Tuzla. A lot of them were happening, were just visible as these, light-colored patches of ground scattered on mostly plowed fields, so soil marks. But some of them, and especially this group, which was visible in the Corona satellite image here, was not. It was actually you can see that already the patches are looking a bit, fuzzy, and definitely not as round and big as the others look like. So in that case, that is how a ancient town in ruins that was recorded by von Vinke in 1830s looked like in 1966. So that is a cautionary tale that we had to apply when interpreting just soil mark evidence time and time again. But a lot of the people before we did our work there started to they weren't convinced why we were mapping barrows and advocating for settlements, and that's because the traditional interpretation was that the barrows were all prehistoric and mostly connected with Scythians, who were very mobile, and therefore they just plonked around barrows wherever they happened to go. And that was certainly not what was visible from the air, especially with larger distributions, with larger aggregations of the monuments, and so on. And that was very much the basis of the article I published in Antiquity in 2013. Oh, God, 10 years ago. So maybe I do deserve this place in the history of aerial archaeology session then. Right. But then afterwards, it also transpired that traces of settlement were indeed recorded either by satellites or by our own photographs in proximity to barrows. This is mapped from satellite imagery. From GeoEye satellite imagery, with traces of settlement right where the Romanian online gazetteer put in together by INP, the former CIMEC, says it should be. So that's a very convenient time label for me to use. But also, there's further settlements like the one with a question mark that we just don't know because that's not recorded anywhere. Probably the one in the middle, badly affected settlement, is probably a little bit further on, but there you go. So that's one example of association between barrows and settlements. There's another one. This one is a Roman villa. It's recorded by the National Gazetteer. Well, that's the number there. But you can see on this plan, its evident proximity to barrows. So the mapping exercise of barrows had allowed me then to create different different categories of aggregations that I then used to advocate for the presence of extensive aggregated settlement in the middle of Dobroja. Now, this was again something that went against grain, against previous knowledge, and that was very much dependent on the modern mapping of rivers and stream availability in the area, i.e. fresh water availability, which, I mean, to a certain extent is true, but then very much, as we all know, it depends what, sort of map resolution were you using when you actually started mapping those. So that's when things become a little bit more blurred. And certainly in this central east-west belt, this is an area that has a lot more availability of water, and that's reflected by the presence of traces of settlement in the vicinity. That was very much, as I said, based on these objective interpretations of geographical features in the area. This is an actual model of hydrology that was made in GIS and actually shows the streaming potential that is happening across the landscape. And this is actually fitting much better with our distribution of settlement across the entire landscape. Also, here I should point out the potential flooding model that we've run there to identify areas that are floodable. A lot of change, as I said, happened because, especially along the Danube River, because of the conversion to arable, protection from floods, which I think the theory now is changing and the area is now being restored as a means of protection against flooding, but certainly it did matter for the interpretation of distribution of archaeological features. We also managed to run more models. This one is using Lisco's path analysis, very basic, to understand a bit more on the road network that was happening and keeping alive, I suppose, military bases, Roman military bases along the Danube. Okay. This one is just a very quick one illustrating the landscape around Galați in the northern part of Dobroja. Well, actually, this one is just outside the Dobroja into the southern Moldova. But perhaps the most exciting new development was the use of LiDAR. Now, this happened for various reasons on a very good quality data set that we managed to convince BBC to collect. And it completely transformed our knowledge around the most iconic site of Romania. That's how it looked like through various visualization. I'm not going to get into details because people know what I'm talking about and they recognize these type of visualizations. With new understanding of military strategy on and around the site, but also a new understanding of the distribution of late Iron Age settlement and how it communicated, how it aggregated together. And I suppose this is now leading to the future with the availability of open access LiDAR data. It's definitely not the same quality, but hey, it's there, it's free, so we've got to use it. So just on this slide, it helped us locate a number of villas around Sarmizegetu Ulpia this time that were mentioned in the literature but never found after. And And is also raising new understandings of, say, how the Bauțar, Zeican corridor, the iron gates of Transylvania, would have functioned from early prehistory all the way into the modern age. So photos are available in online archive. Instructions how to use archives have been published. So there you go.